I've been playing a lot of Apex Legends lately. There's this playlist called Mixtape, which offers respawn game modes that are different to the Battle Royale. For the sake of anyone who doesn't know what any of this means, I'll briefly explain. Apex Legends started as what's known as a Battle Royale game, where there's this huge map and all the players drop down into it from a dropship at the start of the match. They can pretty much choose where they want to land, and then find guns and loot in crates or on the ground. From there, it's a free-for-all, while a circle of death closes in from the outside of the map, forcing all the players closer together. It's kind of like the Hunger Games if all the contestants were parachuted into the arena, and then that poison fog from the second movie slowly crept in from all sides. In Apex, you typically play in teams of 3, and there are 20 teams, which adds up to 60 players per game. Before the match, everyone chooses a character, and all the characters have unique abilities that define them and impact the flow of the game. They're separated into 5 categories based on the abilities they offer: Assault, Controller, Recon, Skirmisher, and Support. Depending on the character you choose, the way you can interact with the game's environment, as well as how you can engage with other players, changes completely. If you play as a support character, you're likely going to get the most out of the match by following your teammates and healing or protecting them. Conversely, if you play as an Assault or Skirmisher character, you'll probably find yourself focused on combat and positioning. In this video, I'm going to reflect on a day I spent playing in Apex's Mixtape playlist as a particular character, and how I believe it affected my mindset and mood both in and out of the game. I've explained the Battle Royale game mode, but the Mixtape playlist is different. The term playlist is used to convey that there are multiple game modes that are played on a rotation, as opposed to just the one mode available in Battle Royale. The Mixtape game modes are called Team Deathmatch, Control, and Gun Run. Mixtape games are played on small, self-contained maps, and players spawn on the ground in predetermined places, instead of being dropped from above. The number of players per team is different between the available modes. In Gun Run, there are 4 teams of 3, in Team Deathmatch, there are 2 teams of 6, and in Control, there are 2 teams of 9. A key difference between Battle Royale and Mixtape modes is that when you're killed, you respawn somewhere in the map, and you keep playing until one team wins, ending the game. In both Battle Royale and Mixtape, it's not unusual for players to gravitate to a particular character. In gamerspeak, this is referred to as maining a character, because you mainly play them. In games like Apex, it can take a lot of in-game hours to truly get the hang of any given character, and some have higher skill ceilings than others, meaning that maining a character for a long time can be quite rewarding. I find that expressing my skill in a game, often representing hundreds of hours of practice and resilience while improving, provides a sense of satisfaction, value, and even self-worth to an extent. Multiplayer games offer opportunities for this in a unique way, as I find I can measure my abilities and improvement against other players competitively in real time, which is different to overcoming preset challenges in an offline single-player game. In any case, there's one character that I've been maining for a while now, called Revenant. Characters in Apex have 3 types of abilities: passive, tactical, and ultimate. Passive abilities are always active, but tactical and ultimate abilities are not always available, and are temporarily deactivated after being used. Revenant's passive abilities are actually threefold. He highlights nearby visible enemies who are low on health for himself and his teammates, he can move faster than usual while crouching, and he can climb faster and higher than usual. His tactical is a pounce that can be charged for greater effect, allowing him to leap long distances into and out of battle. His ultimate is a temporary shield that protects him from damage, and it, along with his tactical leap, are refreshed when he gets a kill. What I find draws me to Revenant is his versatility. When you weaken an enemy, they are highlighted, allowing you to see where they are through walls for a moment. If they come out of cover, you can react faster than you would if you just relied on reaction time alone. If they decide to try and run, you can use your leap to quickly catch up to them and cut them off. On the other hand, his leap can be used defensively to get to safety when you're in a vulnerable position. It can also be used to quickly reach an important position on the map, like an objective or a high-traffic area. I find myself thoughtfully choosing my routes around the map, as well as my escape routes or plans of attack, around my ability to leap. I know that if I get in a position where I'm outnumbered or I don't have time to shield or heal, I can use my ult to gain the upper hand. There's a great balance of offense and defense, and it provides me with a sense of control over the flow of an otherwise chaotic game. I mentioned earlier that I would reflect on my time playing a particular character and how it affected me. Well, Revenant is not the character I want to talk about today, though I felt it was important to explain my usual playstyle to provide a frame of reference for how different characters can change not only our playstyle in-game, but our mental state outside of the game. The character I want to talk about today is called Octane, another skirmisher who has different abilities that lend themselves to a fast-paced and mostly aggressive and offensive playstyle. For his tactical, he injects himself with a stimulant that makes him move faster for a short time at the cost of some of his health. However, his passive ability allows him to regenerate health over time, and in mixtape modes, all characters passively regenerate health, meaning that he gets twice the benefit of this. For his ultimate, he can throw down a launch pad that he and other players can use to jump to great heights and across long distances very quickly. Similarly to Revenant, Octane's abilities can be used to retreat from danger as well. However, unlike Revenant's Leap, Octane's stim recharges so quickly after use that it essentially has no cooldown period, and you can near constantly be in a state of increased speed at the cost of regenerating health. While this can be helpful in combat for making yourself a more difficult target to hit, or for quick repositioning to safety or a better vantage point, it can also be used from the moment you spawn to charge headlong into engagements at objectives or high traffic areas. As you can imagine, however, in doing so, you leave your teammates behind to eat your dust, negating much of the important team play that Apex is built around. I'm going to start speaking subjectively about my experience playing as Octane and share what I noticed about myself while doing so. I remember when I first played as him, I did so defensively. I would use the stim and jump pad to escape in TDM after all my teammates had died around me and I was alone and outnumbered, or I would use these abilities to get back to my team after I had died. Prior to trying Octane, I would play Vantage in a similar way, using her bat to traverse away from enemies or towards teammates. This was before Revenant was reworked to be able to leap and activate his shield. Either way, I didn't really have the confidence to rush at enemies by myself, and I had a lot of old habits from my time spent playing Call of Duty. In COD, enemies die in just a few bullets, meaning that they couldn't easily just duck into cover if you started shooting at them. In Apex, however, players have a lot more health, and pushing enemies you have damaged before they can undergo the lengthy healing process is an important part of the gameplay. In this sense, leaping at them as Revenant or sprinting at them as Octane can be the right play, depending on the circumstances. Even still, I would never push enemies by myself, and would wait for teammates to push, or just try and slowly angle enemies out over time. Sometimes this patient playstyle is rewarded when enemies push haphazardly into my line of fire. Other times, however, especially against enemies who are more experienced and confident at the game, I found myself feeling like a sitting duck who's playing in slow motion. By now, I've developed a better awareness and have an improved sense of when to push or stay back that helps me to perform better than I used to. Some of this is down to knowing more about the mechanics of the game, including aiming and character abilities, but some of it is also down to knowing the habits of the player base and recognizing what kind of players I'm up against. However, when I spent a day playing as Octane recently, I decided I was going to completely commit to full sending it every time I spawned. I would spawn, stim, and push pretty much everything with reckless abandon, regardless of the situation, and aim to do as much damage to whoever I saw as possible before I died. There were plenty of times when I would be near my team, and we're holding a position, but then I'd hear gunfire across the map, and I'd just say to my friend, "I'm going rogue," and sprint towards it to get involved. The decision to play this way kind of creates a chicken and egg situation. Did I choose to play as Octane because this is how I wanted to play, or was it because of Octane that I decided to play like this? The kinds of decisions we can make in games are bound by what we're able to do in games. In Apex, for example, there isn't really a single character that is better at dealing melee damage than any other. Therefore, even if I wanted to try some kind of melee-oriented playstyle, it wouldn't be viable outside of some kind of melee-only tournament where everybody is playing that way. The way we play is influenced and relatively defined by what the characters can do. My desire and ability to full send it off spawn repeatedly is defined by what the skirmisher characters, including Wraith, Horizon, Pathfinder, and Valkyrie, can do to allow me to achieve this. Statistically, playing as Octane, I don't think I was doing any better or worse than usual, though I didn't really keep track of it or anything like that. It's not like I went into it with the mindset of doing an experiment, I was just playing the game. But what I noticed was that after a while of just mindlessly rushing in, getting as many kills as possible, as fast as possible, dying and then repeating the process, I was getting more frustrated than usual. There were so many times where I would die, and I would be, confused as to how or why I died. Like it was impossible that it could have happened. It was like I felt this weird entitlement everywhere I went. Like I felt like I was supposed to be winning more gunfights than I was, or dying less. It reminded me of when I was a kid, and I would rage quit games of Smash Bros. If things weren't going my way. One of my cringiest memories from life is when I rage quit during a game with my cousins. I remember not even thinking about it, I just knew the exact combination of buttons to end the match, and it kicked in like a reflex when I died. I remember always saying, "What? I pressed it!" whenever I didn't dodge or attack in time to counter something somebody else had done, which is the exact kind of surprise I was experiencing in Apex. I also remembered that I used to do the same thing sometimes in COD. If I was playing solo and I was unhappy with how a game was going, I would just quit the game before it finished. Looking back on these kinds of behaviors, they speak to some belief that the outcome that I want is one that I'm supposed to get, for some reason, and the idea that I might not get it, or the reality that I've lost it, is offensive or distressing to me. What I'm describing here is entitlement. When we're entitled, we have exaggerated expectations, notions of ourselves as special, and an inflated sense of deservingness. When our expectations of these things are violated, we experience disappointment, feel a threat to our ego, and perceive what happened as an injustice. This can leave us feeling dissatisfied, threatened, and of course, angry, which are all things that we might typically find to be distressing. I'm not saying that I identify with all of this, or that I'm an entirely entitled person, but there are aspects of this that resonate with me. But there's an important backstory to how I might have come to be like this. Back before skill-based matchmaking was as pervasive in multiplayer games as it is now, it was easy for me to think of myself as someone who was good at a game like COD, because I was consistently one of the best players in the lobby. However, COD also used to allow you to see everyone's stats in the lobby before the game, as well as who was partied together, so I used to do what I would call lobby shopping. I wouldn't just dodge lobbies anytime a player was better than me, but it gave me an idea of who I was going to be up against, or who to look out for on the enemy team as particularly threatening. If anything, it would be kind of exciting to match with someone who was at a similar skill level, as it would be like me and my army of noobs against them and their army of idiots. I would always have my eye out for them and try to keep track of where they were on the map, like we were the only 2 players and everybody else was an NPC. However, if I matched into a lobby where there were 4 people who had impressive stats partied together, I would leave because I knew they were going to be on the other team and I was in for a terrible time. However, by lobby shopping, I might have only ever put myself in situations where I was likely to win, thus creating and reinforcing the idea that I'm good at games, and perhaps a sense of entitlement. I am good, therefore I deserve to win and not die. When I'm killed and when I lose at games, it's confusing because it doesn't fit with my view of myself as good at games. I believe that the availability of these stats is important for informed consent, and allowing players to engage with games the way they want to. And my personal narrative is that these stats were removed to protect newer or less skilled players from feeling bad about their poor stats. In Apex's TDM, for example, there's no way to know how many times you or anybody else in the game died, even though it's directly correlated with the scores of the game. It keeps us focusing on playing moment to moment without ever stopping to evaluate how we're doing, because if we did that, we might change our mind about wanting to play. But if someone plays TDM and gets 9 kills and dies 11 times, that person was a liability, because they contributed more to the enemy score than to their own. When they look at the leaderboard at the end of the game, however, and see that they got 9 kills, they might feel like they played well, and then want to keep playing. I see this as manipulative and patronizing to players, and a representation of how games being run primarily as businesses, as opposed to being made for fun, is problematic in today's gaming landscape. But I digress. I remember making a new PSN account and playing Killer in Dead by Daylight before SBMM and the reworking of the rank system to an MMR system, and I went from rank 20 to red rank without a single survivor escaping through an exit gate. This isn't just a meaningless humble brag, of course. I'm trying to paint the picture that our perception of ourselves as good at multiplayer games is relative to who we're with and who we're up against. In the DBD example, the first 2 games I lost were back-to-back games against 4 of the best survivors in the community at the time, who were playing in pairs together. Prior to that, I wasn't really challenged because I was skilled enough to win each game. It stands to reason that if I didn't know any better, or who the players who beat me were, that I might have found the losses confusing or frustrating because they weren't consistent with my prior pattern of winning every game. I do know better though, and I understand that I'm not entitled to winning every game I play, or to outplaying everyone in every situation, or never making mistakes. But a lot of this seemed to go out the window when I played as Octane, and I reverted to an angry man-child who was genuinely starting to believe that there was magically something wrong or different about the game that was causing me to lose gunfights or die more often. My theory as to why this was the case is quite simple. Firstly, I wasn't really positioning myself to succeed like I normally would. Where I described myself as consciously leaping to and from battle as Revenant, I was instead only charging towards fights as Octane for the most part, meaning I wasn't earning the upper hand the way I normally would. I was putting myself in situations that were more stressful than usual, and where the stakes felt higher in winning gunfights, because the only way out of a fight would be to win it. Naturally, I died more because of this, and possibly because I was new to a kind of playstyle that I could improve at over time. The second reason is that I was engaging in gunfights way more frequently. I would spawn, stim, and get in a gunfight quickly, meaning that the flow of getting kills or dying was happening at an alarmingly high rate. It was a constant dopamine cycle, where I would want to press the stim button, and every time I pressed it, I was rewarded with awesome speed, and then because of the speed, I was rewarded with more engagement in the form of gunfights. I would still win a lot of them, maybe even most of them, I don't know, but I was definitely dying more than usual. I started to feel like I was stimming in real life, like I was injecting my brain over and over again with chemicals that it liked, and I got stuck in this terrible cycle where I wanted constant satisfaction and fulfillment, just constantly pressing the stim button and sprinting faster than everyone around me. It kind of reminds me of how I used to feel sometimes playing as Huntress in DBD. By playing a killer who has 5 hatchets, I increased my odds of facing instances of failure because there was a much higher chance of missing a hatchet than a regular attack. The more chances for missing, the more chances for failure, the more chances to become frustrated. By the end of my day playing as Octane, my attention span was so short that I was actually rushing in other parts of my life. I'm getting irritated by Duolingo because it'd be like, "Tu veux travailler ici?" And I'd be like, "Do you work here?" And it'd be like, "Pardon," because it means, "Do you want to work here?" And I'd be like, "Sacre bleu! This is bullshit!" I approached everything like I had just stimmed in real life, and I was sprinting as fast as I could to get to the end of everything. I felt stuck with this restless, agitated feeling, like nothing I had done in Apex that day was enough, and I was so negative on myself. I was thinking about a game of TDM where I got 19 kills and we lost, and I was going over all the poor decisions I made or gunfights I lost, and beating myself up over them, feeling like I wasn't good enough. All this over a game mode that was strung together as an afterthought that I really only even started playing because COD had changed too much from what I enjoyed, but I still felt an itch for competitive first-person shooters. So, while I framed the way I played as Octane as a decision, this aspect became kind of blurry by the end of the day. At first, it was a conscious choice to play aggressively as a character who lends himself to that style, but by the end, I was doing it on autopilot. It was way harder for me to even be aware of myself outside of feeling that I wanted to win. It wasn't a choice, and I felt trapped in a negative loop of spawning, stimming, running, dying, and feeling frustrated. Reflecting on it now, I can see that the design of the character affected me to an extent in this way. I think there are other factors that would have contributed to my bad mood, of course. I would imagine that different individuals could play the same character in the same way and not have the same experience. There have been plenty of times when I've played as Octane and not had a negative experience because of it, so it's not like I believe there's anything wrong with his design, or with me for having a bad day. Hopefully I've encouraged you to consider why you choose the characters you do in games. What kind of characters do you find you gravitate to, if any? If you've ever had a bad day on a game, can you link it to how the characters you played affected your playstyle? Maybe some of the aspects of entitlement that I outlined resonated, or you have a similar or different experience with skill-based matchmaking. I wonder if there were 2 people who had never played Apex before, and they both played for a month or so as one character each, if their habits or playstyles in the game would differ. I wonder if one played as Pathfinder and the other as Caustic, if the Pathfinder player would feel grounded and limbless without their grapple, and the Caustic player would feel exposed without their defenses. If they switched characters, would the Pathfinder player push recklessly as Caustic, and would the Caustic player play too reserved as Pathfinder? For me, what I've gotten out of this is a greater sense of awareness of my own entitlement. I know it's easy to judge entitlement, but it doesn't just come from nowhere. I find that many times when I die, I reflexively say some kind of excuse like, "Oh, there were 2 of them," or "Oh, they had a wingman." I've been trying to interrupt this habit, and I found I'm much less angry than I used to be. As with everything, there are good days and bad days, but I feel that anger is counterproductive when it comes to improvement, because the entitlement that informs it prevents accountability for mistakes and blocks awareness of or acceptance to growth areas. But this begs the ultimate question. Am I playing to improve, or am I playing to have fun? Is it possible to have fun if I don't improve? How can I improve if I don't play all the time? If I'm not playing like I'm addicted and like my life depends on it, how can I ever get good enough to feel good about myself and to have fun like I used to when I played FPS games? Why am I playing it if it isn't fun? Why are we doing this to each other?